Hey obviously it's been a while since I've come to actually just share how I'm feeling and what has been happening behind the waves of what you see as me being the CEO of Washea. But whew, I really wanted to have a moment today to actually just like drop in and reflect on how things have been feeling for me. So I have spent probably the last week. So just for context, it is now the 12th of December 2025, and the whole point of me actually sharing the date is very um it's very important, and this is something that I really struggled with, and because of how towards the end of the year usually I am naturally just more withdrawn and more sad about where I am in life and where I feel like I should be, and just being in that space of I wish that things were different. However, the whole fact that I have Washea and I'm able to update you on what is actually going on internally for me is really special. And as I go through this process of building my business and my passion, and like really looking at the bigger picture behind the why, it it does make me feel really proud. And I'm saying this uh about 12 hours after me just crying and releasing all of the emotions that were pent up. Now, for about a week, I have been noticing that I've just been very tense. And usually I can say, like, oh, I feel this way. What is it that I need? And I will kind of like go through sort of like a sensory menu of things that can usually help and address that unmet need that is making me feel like really just not comfortable with where I am, what I'm doing, and just the environment, or it can sometimes be my emotions. And what I have learned is that, like, through therapy, and this is neurodivergent adapted therapy, since making that adaptation, I have really seen so many benefits, and I can't believe that I've actually managed to um, make it this far with therapy, because I usually kind of like check out of it, because not like leave it, but just like emotionally, because I struggle to take those things out of the space. like the actual therapy space, once the door shuts and I am back into my everyday routine, I leave those things in the therapy space. So I understand and can use those things. But previously, I was just leaving them and like compartmentalizing them in therapy, and that was it. And then I would wonder why it wasn't working. But this has been working really, really well. And because this particular therapy that I've been doing, we've also been thinking and pairing it with somatic exercises and like really connecting with my body. That has been really helpful as well, because again, I spend so long like floating. Like I've spent a prolonged amount of time like reminding myself that I need to bring myself back into my body. And then obviously with what I do with Washea as well, that is something that is really important. So I'm glad that I've got the foundation to not only just do it when I'm focused on business, and then also like just in therapy, like I'm connecting the dots and actually being able to take those things and those practices and actually doing them in the smaller pockets of my day. And that has been working really, really well. So, as I've been able to do all of that, um, like I realized that like the menu of different things wasn't really working. And I then kind of got into that mode of, oh my goodness, I am sliding backwards in terms of like therapy. And I was like, I thought I was doing really, really well. And it made me feel worse because I was starting to panic, and I was like, no, I'm doing really well. And I was able to talk myself down from that point of me thinking that I literally like wasted most of the year in therapy and like using therapeutic methods to actually help regulate myself and get myself to a place where I can begin to like name emotions and not judge myself for whatever actually comes up. Like it actually feels a lot more, it just actually gets to feel a lot more safer in my body. And I love that. I love that. But as I was getting through this, I had managed to like calm myself down. And right now, I'm not even sure really how I managed to do it, but I was talking to a dear friend of mine, and what had happened was she shared a quote, and right now I literally cannot remember it because I saw it while I was in a sleep state, which was beautiful. But I will put it in the description. I'll put it in the comments actually. Yeah, I'll put the quote in the comments and I will tag her because her words were very, very needed, and I didn't actually realize I needed them. And it was at that point, and I was just getting ready to breathe. I was getting ready to like just switch off for the night. And this space that I was in was a very nice space. It was a little hub of what was needed at the time. And because I was again I began to start judging what was happening, and like I'd been really, really tearful pretty much every single day. And I was just I was trying to reflect on like, oh my gosh, I've not had a day for at least the last week where I've not cried. I feel uncomfortable with that. And like what's going on? And I've been thinking like, oh yeah, like I might be welcoming my sacred bleed soon. So that can kind of um I'm sort of just aware of that. And I was like, that could be it. And I was like, okay, yeah, it could be part of it. But I was like, no, this usually the menu items are things that help this. And I was like, no, this is deeper. And I was really starting to get upset over the fact that I couldn't figure out really why I was so irritated, because like everything was irritating me. Um, it got to the point where my breathing and my breath was irritating me. I was almost too aware of my body and the fact that I was existing, and like I was upset that I was seeing parts of my body move just as they do subconsciously, and I was like, this is all too much. But even in those moments when I had an abundance of emotions that were kind of like stacked and flowing around me all at the same time, it was it was very um it was very apparent that there was something that I needed to express that I hadn't. And this wasn't a conversation that like I would have felt like I just needed to have with one person. It was like, no, this is something to where I would feel better if I screamed it into the metaphorical forest. And eventually, I feel like one of these days I will just go into the forest and like scream because I feel like that is a very cathartic way of just clearing energy. So, all of this was kind of happening, and all these emotions were bubbling up to the surface. And because yesterday there were just so many things that were happening, and it's not like things I didn't want to happen, because I have spent so many years working and like fine tuning my reality to match what I was experiencing yesterday. The thing was that my emotional bandwidth was a lot lower than it typically is. And I just thought, it's okay. And I had to kind of reparent myself and soothe my body and my mind, because I was like, oh, yeah, it's December. And I was like, that is probably why you're really upset right now. And I felt Like, I wanted to scream and cry, but because at the time everybody else was asleep and I also didn't want to overstimulate myself even more, I just I just allowed myself to cry, and I reaffirmed to myself that I was safe with the tears that were coming, and I just wanted to have that release without judgment. And there were so many things that were coming up, and the whole reason is because uh as of the 17th of December 2025, it will be 10 years since I lost my little one. And this particular pregnancy loss was life changing, and what I feel makes this year different and more, I don't know, impactful. Every year up until like today, um, I usually, since it's happened, I dissociate, and that has been my coping mechanism for the longest time. And the reason that I did that was because, number one, when it happened, there was so much anger that I felt. And it was just with how it was all handled. I also felt ashamed. There was guilt for being so disconnected from my body up until that point that I had no clue what was actually going on. And because the world around me at that time was very, very uh abundant with things, it was very chaotic. My body was in a state of chronic stress. I was also dealing with chronic pain on top of that, and there were a number of demands and things that I was having to put my attention to, that my womb space ended up being the last thing that I was focused on. And having this experience has made it to me kind of now feeling the difference between like just blindly going through life and not necessarily remembering anything, because when people used to ask me, "Oh, how was Christmas?" I had no recollection of it. And honestly, the past 9.5 years, or definitely the last 9 years, they've been a blur in terms of the Christmases who I spent them with like what actually happened, I blocked out. I blocked it out. And I know that Christmas is a thing to where it's a family focused holiday and break. But yeah, the level of escapism that I chose as a way to protect myself from the questions of like, oh, why are you so sad? It's Christmas, smile. Why are you not excited for Christmas? I have not been in the Christmas mood for a decade. And that's why I haven't gone to any baby showers. Obviously I congratulate those very close to me who are expecting or have given birth. Like it's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. But again, this is me kind of sharing how I'm going through the process of grieving while also holding space for other miracles outside of myself to happen. And with this, there were just so many, there was so many emotions coming up. And like, I just remember how, and it's still, and earlier, it, it really got to me because I was angry at how I was expected to go through that, have that experience, and then snap back as if it didn't happen. I was expected to go back to work a week later, and paracetamol was the only thing. I was expected to continue smiling when it was something that was just too it was too painful. Like I can't believe how like I was already exhausted from that, but to then be expected to look as if I hadn't just gone through that, that's not fair on me. That was never fair for the people around me to actually expect that of me. And then when it came to like just support in general, what I needed was somebody to give me a hug and tell me that it might not be okay right now, but it's going to be. And that experience wasn't my fault. I needed to hear that. And I also needed to hear that my emotions were okay to be expressed in any way I wanted them. and any way they needed to come out, because being in a space where that wasn't accepted, like that wasn't an option, I struggled. And then it wasn't something that was ever really spoken about again. So to me, it was as if that experience never happened, that my baby didn't matter. And it's like there's so much frustration and anger that there is still a lot of stigma around people expressing any type of emotion around baby loss through any means. And I want, and I'm dedicated to changing that conversation, because yes, baby loss through whatever means is devastating. But what's even worse is not having adequate support afterwards, and feeling alone afterwards, and having all these emotions such as guilt, shame, frustration, anger, and confusion around why me, why now, why then, why is my body doing this, why isn't my body doing this, what did I do wrong? All of these sort of like spiraling thoughts, having these, and then not being able to express them because other people feel uncomfortable. They don't like feeling uncomfortable. So as a result, you push down how you're feeling. And that's not okay. It was never okay. And the thing that is just wild to me is how there is so much support in society and medically for pregnancy, as it should be. But in terms of accessibility for things such as planning for a baby, fertility, and also baby loss, that level of support drops drastically. There are so many more hoops that you have to go through in order to get some level of support. And even then, the support isn't enough for the woman who has just gone through and experienced baby loss. And that is, it's not good. So another thing that is really getting to me, and again, this all just kind of like poured out of me, and like the emotions were really, really, raw and intense at the time. And like, yeah, like 12 hours ago, I really want to highlight the fact that after loss or prolonged infertility, there needs to be a different approach to the woman who decides that pregnancy or welcoming a baby into her world, into her life, is something that she wants to do. There are support measures that need to be put in place because the way in which a pregnancy is approached with somebody who hasn't lost a baby or had any type of reproductive struggles, that approach is so different. And it's not to say that that is something that doesn't need as much thought. No, the same level of thought and awareness and care needs to be it needs to be the same or just better across the board, because this is why a lot of women struggle with feeling like their bodies matter. This is why they struggle with feeling like their emotions connected to what they look like or how they feel in terms of pain and things like that. How their life looks versus somebody else who doesn't necessarily have these challenges and things to consider. It's a lot to handle, but it's not impossible with the right support. And that was one of the reasons as to why I set up and created Washea, because I am seeing, and I've continued to see so many holes in the like the fertility space, the baby loss support and grief space, and then also in the pregnancy after loss space. So all of these things, all of these elements are so important, and it's not perfect. And I am very confident now with what I have to offer and the fact that it's different, but the approach actually bridges the gap between baby loss and healing through that. And then I continue to cradle you and support you as you go through planning for your baby and really grounding in and anchoring in to the manifestation and the spiritual side of connecting with your baby who is no longer earth side, so up in the stars, and one of your protectors and guides. So connecting with that version of your spirit baby, but also helping you connect with the spirit baby version of the baby you are yet to meet, so your future baby. And then the support does not stop there. there is also the serenity birthing experience, which holds you from the very moment that you receive a positive pregnancy test all the way until you have your little bundle in your arms. And this is just something that I am so amazed with right now, because I hold you all the way through that process as you understand my lived experience. And I'd like to think that my experience with this and just the emotions and how they chose to flow out today, it wasn't for nothing. So, wherever you are on your journey, I can and will support you. So, kind of moving through the rest of December, I'm going to be healing out loud and just being really honest about how I'm feeling, and I'm wanting to connect more with the community that resonates with me. So, those who have struggled with infertility and not necessarily had a loss, but also those who have had a loss and are feeling alone with this whole process. And again, it does not have to be something that is recent. So please don't think that because it happened over 12 years ago, 15 years ago, a couple of decades ago, and you are still feeling the sting in certain areas or certain moments of your um, life every so often, the baby loss experience is for you. And also the infertility infertility comfort experience, sorry, and the baby loss comfort experience are similar, but they speak to different experiences of um, the conception process. And what this does is it makes it a lot more comfortable for you to be around people who understand where you're coming from. So, yeah, if you hear this, thank you. I would like to think that I will be back before the year is out with a few more updates. But yeah, thank you. This wasn't planned. I am really wanting to speak to those who are ready to listen. And I think this goes without saying. If this makes you uncomfortable, please do not say anything to me or anybody in the comments about their experience. I am creating a safe space for women and those who want to share their experience with me. And yeah, this past decade just feels very surreal. In all honesty, I did not expect to make it, but I'm here and there's a reason for that. So now it's time for me to honor my little girl and get the message out there. Thank you ever so much for spending time with me today. Thank you from my little girl in the stars, and just thank you for holding space for me. Thank you for being patient with me over the past the past 5 years, and like 3 years specifically with YouTube and just my business, and just kind of getting it out there. Um yeah, thank you. I can't believe I'm here doing what I wanted to, because I've been so determined to get to this point. And while I'm not exactly where I expected to be this far into life, things are starting to click into place. So, um, until next time, I will see you soon.